Hey, this is Anthony from Havoc Games. Short video I'm going to try to put out on kind of the basics of Havoc. Take a look at our how to play video, which sounds a lot better than my voice and kind of explains things in a pretty concise way. But what I'll do is I'll walk you through archetype, class cards, show you the difference of weapons, and kind of walk you through a little bit of hand selection, how you create your deck and so forth. And then I'll kind of walk through a little bit about distance and initiative if this doesn't go too long. So I'm going to use one of my favorite pairs, which is the Hastings Pair. So you have a Norman Knight facing against the Saxon Housecarl. So we've got, I think it's 70 specific archetypes, and these work as kind of like recipe cards, and I'll walk through this in a second. But we generally try to make the archetypes set up in such a way so that there is a matching pair fight. So there's the Agincourt pair, where there's a French knight against an English man-at-arms. We have a bunch of Vikings. You can start off with an Egyptian charioteer against an Assyrian warrior. And it runs the whole gamut from the Bronze Age to the High Middle Ages, and then there are these fantasy foes. And you can mix things up however you want. So these cards are for the Hastings Pair. So the Norman Knight is prowess 4 with 10 body, 5 fatigue. And the Saxon Housecarl is prowess 4 with 10 body and 5 fatigue as well. So the Knight is a knight, and the Housecarl is a warrior. It says it right there. The archetype cards are kind of like recipes. So what these do is they give the weapon, the armor, and the abilities of that archetype. And these are kind of the standard archetype. This would be like what we would say is the standard Norman Knight from that time. And it gives the selected deck. So for example, let me just go through, so for the Norman Knight, this has you set up with chainmail, knight guard, prowess 4, his ability. He has a war axe, chainmail, conical helm, medium shield, and gauntlets. If you didn't want to have him use a war axe, because on the Bayeux tapestry, there were people using swords, and I think there was somebody using a club or a mace. You can swap out the weapon, the war axe, for the club if you wanted to. And that would then drive changes to the deck, which I'll get into a little bit later. But so this is the basic Norman Knight. So prowess 4, 10 body, 5 fatigue, war axe, chainmail, and so forth. And then he comes with 4 great blows, 1 hard cut, 4 cuts, 1 angled shield parry, 4 shield parries, and 11 pauses. That's a recipe again. So the only thing that's required is the 4 great blows because he's a knight. Well, he also, and based on the weapon, with the war axe, the war axe has 8 action cards, right? So, and then his prowess gives him 1 extra defense and 1 extra defense and 1 extra attack card. So you can build it to however you want. If you wanted to have him a prowess 8, have at it. You can do that. It wouldn't be much of a matchup against a prowess 4 guy, but you get the point. You can switch them however you want to switch them. What we built into Havoc is flexibility. This is an engine with, you can run it pretty high, and you can take it, through all kinds of twists and turns. So the Saxon Housecarl is a warrior, which means, so he doesn't get the free great blows, right? He gets, as a warrior, he gets 4 free active defenses of his choice, and then he gets an extra -1 to the active defense, right? So he has a chainmail as well, and a conical helm. So since he's using a really long battle axe, a length 7 battle axe, he also gets what's called polearm protection, which is a passive protection. And this just kind of indicates that if you've got a polearm or anything that's a length 6 or above, you have, whenever you pause, you get -1 applied to hit. That's because your pole arm is acting as a defense and kind of gets in the way of your opponent's attack. If you are actively defending with the pole arm, you have to do either a half parry or you could do a dodge. But anyway, so the standard archetypal Housecarl set up with 1 hard cut, 5 cuts, 2 half parries. Let me just go through it actually. 1 hard cut, and then he has 5 cuts. He has an artful dodge, and I'll talk about that in a second. 2 half parries and 2 dodges. And then he has 14 pauses. So he's slow. The reason he's slow is because he has this big, massive battle axe. So the Norman is quicker. He only has 11 pauses. The Norman's going to have initiative for speed. The Housecarl is going to have initiative for length, going in. But if you wanted to, for example, if you wanted to swap out, instead of half parries, you wanted to swap those out and put in, 2 more dodges instead, 2 more dodges, have at it. You can go ahead and do it. What you can't do is you can't swap a half parry for a blade parry, right? And if he doesn't have a shield, you can't swap it, for a shield parry because he doesn't have a shield. But, you can fiddle with the recipe. And I think the best way to do it is to start off with what you see on the card. And then, as you play it some, you're going to want to wind up tweaking it a bit. So let me talk a bit about tactics and so forth. I'm not going to get into the abilities because that can be a wrinkle. But we're going to go through the battle axe against what the Norman has. And he has a war axe, but he also has a shield. Okay. So let's look at this. Both of them are cutting weapons. One of them requires 2 hands, the battle axe, so he needs 2 hands. Can't have a shield. The one-handed war axe can be used 2 hands, and if he does use it 2 hands, he can use a half parry in it if he wants to. But it can be used, it's basically a one-handed weapon, so you tend to want to use it with a shield. So the battle axe has only 5 action cards. The war axe has 8. So the war axe is a smaller weapon. It's faster. The length of a war axe is 4. The length of a battle axe is 7. So because the battle axe has more than 2, it's 2 or more in weapon length over the Norman's war axe, the Saxon Housecarl is going to start off with the initiative. So he's going to, have the opportunity to chop the Norman's head off as quickly as possible. The Norman, with his shield, is going to want to, wind up trying to get inside his weapon length and change the distance to short. And then, because his war axe is much shorter, it's 2+ shorter than the battle axe, if the distance between the 2 fighters is short, then the Norman has the advantage. He has the initiative, and his blow will land first. So to hit, so the battle axe is a very heavy, slow weapon, so it's a -1 to hit. War axe is nothing. Damage is significantly different. So a battle axe hit is often a 1 and done with 10. And plus there's a red die result on 7 to 10. So, that's what, a 40% chance of a red die result. And it's a red damage of 3. So you have a 40% chance of inflicting 13 points of damage with the battle axe. But the war axe is nothing to laugh at. At 7, that's a lot. And then with the red damage of 2, it's not as deadly as the war axe, but it's quicker. So the war axe has 5 action cards versus the battle axe has 5 versus the war axe has 8. So even though, it does a little bit less damage, you could conceivably get a couple more cuts in before the battle axe could. So that weapon type is going to drive tactical considerations. So you think about what people want to do with their tactic cards. I'll just jump ahead to tactic cards for a second. So tactics are your fighter's footwork, and they're played at the first impulse in every combat round. What you do is you play, a tactic card and a combat action card. You place them against your opponent face down, you reveal them at the same time. Okay, so the tactic cards, though, you can look at the differences. This is all very intuitive, and everything's on the card, so you don't really have to remember this. You just need to remember to look at the card. So with the longer weapon, the length 7 weapon, battle axe, the Housecarl is going to want to keep distance because he's going to want to keep the distance between him and the Norman at long. So he'll tend to keep distance. The Norman will often close or stand ground. Really, if the Saxon continues to keep distance as his footwork, the Norman is not going to be able to shorten the distance between him just by the footwork of the tactic cards, which is why the Norman will then aim for a shield parry, right? So what is a tactic that the Norman will often do, not always, because you can really mix things up however you want to, is the Norman will close and shield parry with the idea that he could also stand ground too. But the Norman will often shield parry up front with the idea that he'll be able to knock off any attack that the Saxon is trying to throw at him, and then a successful shield parry will shift the distance to short. And when the distance gets shifted to short, when the distance gets shifted to shortest weapon, starts off at longest weapon. When it shifts to short, then the Norman gets the initiative card, and that means that the Norman has a chance to land his attack first. The way you track distance and initiative, by the way, is, there's the initiative card, right, which just pass back and forth. Once you play a few fights, you know who has the initiative. So the distance and initiative cards, so this is the distance card. There are 4 distances. You can be out of reach, you can be long, you can be at short, or you can be at contact distance. And yeah, it's a little bit clumsy to kind of flip things around. You have, 4 points basically for the card. The initiative state works the same way. So if the distance is short, the shortest weapon that's what the initiative state's going to be. And that tells you everything on the card that you need to know, right? And if the distance is long, I'll put out something that'll go through the tactic card differences in a little bit, but the distance is long, everything's on the card. So everything you need to know is there. Now, the reason, just so you know, the reason that we wound up shifting this is we found in playtest we had 2 cards for each of these. And we didn't like that because it was a proliferation of administrative cards. But the other thing that it did is because we had to deal with this, everything has to be in multiples of 54, is it kept us from putting in some weapons that we really wanted to put in. So we wound up combining the cards, which got us, the Great Sword of War, the Poleaxe, and the War Pick. So I think that these are, well worth the cost of combining the initiative and distance cards. We were able to kind of work that out. Okay, so let's go into hands and such. So each fighter has a 25 card deck. And it's a mix of attacks, defenses, and pauses. And let me just sit on these for just a minute. I'll park on them for just a minute. So attacks are all red. Of course, combat action card is green, so your opponent doesn't know what you got. Defenses are all blue. Pauses are all green. So you can sort of see what you got, quickly. So the attacks are keyed into, we have different types of attacks that are kind of keyed in towards weapons. So we're talking about a Norman here. right? The Norman's using a war axe, so he can do cuts. But because he's a knight, knights get exclusive great blows, which does red damage on any hit. The only problem is you have to pause before or after a great blow. They're the nice things that knights gets to do. So every knight gets 4 free great blows. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the great blows give an extra plus to hit, extra plus on the red die. So that turns this war axe, right? If you're using it with a great blow, that winds up instead of 7 damage, you're doing 9 damage as a base. And then if you get an 8, 9, or 10, but remember you get a +1 to the red die. So if you get a 7, 8, 9, or 10, you then add another 2. So the great blow is really a powerful attack. You got to pause either before or after you use it, though. So, it's the wind up, right? So great blows are keyed in for knights. So a hard cut, since we're dealing with an axe, swords can do hard cuts. A hard cut would be, this is an advanced attack. So remember, if you're a prowess 4 guy, like he is, the prowess 4 guy gets 1 attack card and 1 defense card, and those bonuses are advanced. So because the Norman Knight is a prowess 4, he gets a bonus attack that's advanced, the hard cut, and he gets a bonus defense, and he takes the angled shield parry because he wants to try to shift the distance to short. So cuts go with the axe, right? So it's all intuitive, right? You know that an axe you're not going to be able to thrust with, okay? Or smash with. If you have a club or a mace, you use a smash, right? And well, what does that do? That winds up, it's intuitive, but what that winds up doing is it has a different kind of impact on things like bash and wound. Looking to see if I have bash and wound handy. Yeah. So with the a smash attack, if you drew bash 24 and you had a smash attack, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't, you'd draw the card, you'd say, oh, it's laid out, bash 24, but, it was a smash attack, so I'm out of luck, it doesn't apply. But as a knight, you can great blow with any weapon, even a dagger, even a fist, right? And so if that was a great blow, then you get, that would apply. So that's, the bash cards are linked to the weapon and attack types. Same thing with the wound cards, right? So they're linked to that. And then you saw that they have armor, right? Just looking for the armor card. Right, so the armor is synchronized both to hit and damage, right? So chainmail is excellent protection. And it'll have a -2 to hit, and then it does a minus red damage, -1. So either of these guys trying to whack at each other is going into it with an armor penalty in there. But that's a topic for another video. So everything's keyed in. Now, what I've told some people is Havoc is basically rock, paper, scissors with dice. Okay, that's what the card play is. So you shuffle your card, 25. I'm not a very good shuffler, but you'll get the point. So you shuffle cards. It's the Norman. You shuffle for the Saxon. Shuffle. Okay. You draw because they're both warriors at the start. And this is kind of specified on their class cards, right? It tells the hand size, 7-card hands. So Saxon draws 7 cards, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's kind of crummy, so I'm going to swap it out, even though you didn't see that. Okay. And so let's say this is what the Saxon draw is. So you can see I didn't do a very good job of shuffling, right? But this is what the Saxon draw is for his first hand. All right, and so then the Norman, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, he draws, you know, again, you can tell I did a really poor job of shuffling, but you get the point. We can just swap one out for the demonstration purposes here. Okay, so Norman says, okay, what do I got? I got, ooh, 2 great blows and a shield parry and then a bunch of pauses. So, you know, he thinks about what he's going to do. And then the Housecarl has, okay, a cut, 2 half parries, 2 dodges, and 2 pauses. So heavy on the defense for the Housecarl, heavy on the offense for the Norman. So just like in rock, paper, scissors, you kind of want to optimize your tactic. You know, you want to attack when your opponent pauses, right? Because that's usually when he's at his most least defenseless, whatever. You want to defend when your opponent attacks, because that'll give you the best opportunity for not only beating the attack by making them miss, but then overriding some of these initiative issues, the distance. So you can change the distance, you can change the initiative state to your advantage. You know, so like the Norman would want a shield parry, like I mentioned. He'd want a shield parry when the Housecarl attacks. And then hopefully with the Housecarl will then miss, because the Norman has a pretty good shield parry. I can just figure it out real quick. So it's -2, -3 for prowess 4, an extra -1 for his shield. So it's -4 right there, another -2 for the armor. So he has -6. And then, you know, you'd stack that up against what his chances is. But that turns his, actually -6. And then, so the Housecarl is going in with a 17, needs to roll at least a 17, and then he had to deal with the modifiers for the Housecarl. So you have the -1 for the weapon, you have +1 for his prowess, and then since it's a regular cut, there's nothing. So that would be a very powerful defense against the the Norman's defense would be a very powerful defense against the Saxon's cut. So you want to attack when your opponent pauses. Whenever there's attack, there's a dice roll, right? So in this case, the 17, I think that would have, the Norman would have been hamburger, shakes, and fries, as the saying goes, because that would have been a red 9. You want to defend when your opponent attacks, and you want to pause when your opponent defends to burn it. There's a wrinkle to this. If you have the initiative card, so at the start of the fight it goes with the Housecarl because he has the longer weapon, then it's not a terrible thing to attack when your opponent attacks. Why do I say that? Because you have the initiative, and if both combatants attack, your attack is resolved first. If you hit, your opponent's attack is discarded. So, and in this case, it's actually a little bit better for the Norman, because the passive shield protection, the -1 passive shield protection that the Norman gets from having his medium shield, see, is out of it. So, okay, I think that kind of runs through the basics. Remember, it's everything is all printed on the cards. You're dealing with a 25 card deck, you shuffle it. If you're dealing with a fighter type, you have 7 card hands, unless you're really, really good, in which case you have 8 cards. If you're injured or bashed or you have a wound condition that applies, you might have fewer than 7 cards. If you're a citizen, because their talents lie elsewhere, you're going to have a 6 card hand, so it'll be a little bit less. When you think about what you are doing tactic-wise, you want to consider your weapon, your armor, your fighting style based off of your opponent. You want to pick your footwork based off of these things. And you want to clobber your friend. I think that's about it. This went a little longer than I thought. Hopefully this is clear enough. Shoot me any questions if you have any. We are happy to get in touch with you and respond to any questions as best we possibly can, as quickly as we can. Thank you so much. Bye.